Hey there, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to this week on power. What a chapter, huh? Kind of a longer chapter. There were some exercises to do. Let's dive in. Give you a minute to open up your books. We are going to start by reading together on pages 61 and 62. Let's get there. Anger, huh? When we feel anger, we are often very angry that we will feel anger. Damn anger. It tells us when we can't get away with our old lives any longer. It tells us that an old life is dying. It tells us that we are being reborn. And birthing hurts. The hurt makes us angry. Anger is the firestorm that signals the death of our old life. Anger is the fuel that propels us into our new one. Anger is not a tool. Anger is a tool, not a master. Anger is meant to be tapped into and drawn upon. Used properly, anger is useful. Sloth, apathy, and despair are the enemy. Anger is not. Anger is our friend. Not a nice friend. Not a gentle friend, but a very, very loyal friend. It will tell us when we have been betrayed. It will always tell us when we have betrayed ourselves. Yeah. It will tell us that it's time to act in our own best interest. Anger is not the action itself. It's the action's invitation. So here, anger, I don't know. I think anger is meant to be listened to. Anger is to be respected. Anger, as she says, is the map that helps us know what bothers us and how to establish boundaries, and it points us where we want to go. It's a sign of health, actually. It's to be acted upon, not acted out. Do you see the difference? How many of us are guilty in the acting out? Anger is fuel, as she we read, intended to motivate you to do something. Anger points the way to freedom, giving us a sense of direction. Anger should lead to an action. I love how she says, anger is our friend, not a nice one, but a loyal one. We've heard of truth and love, right? When you know that someone's for you. So the question is it wrong to be angry? Maybe something else to ponder, and if something hits you when I said that, or as you think about that, maybe share that during our check-in. I love how Julia says in the middle of page, well, wait, hold on here. Yeah, on 63, but it's about the synchronicity stuff. Synchronicity, it's basically that virtuous intermeshing of events. Don't be surprised if you're discounting your synchronicities. Have you noticed that you're kind of like, no, that's not a coincidence, or that's not related? Are you discounting anything? 63, Julia says this. In my experience, it's my experience that we're much more afraid that there might be a God, than we are there may not be. Incidences like those that above, she points out, that happen, we dismiss them as sheer coincidence. People talk about how dreadful it would be if there were no God. I think such talk is hooey. Most of us are a lot more comfortable feeling like we're not being watched too closely. Do you feel like you're being watched? Do you not think about that? Is that how you feel, like you're being watched? If God, by which I do not necessarily mean a single pointed Christian concept, but an all-powerful, all-knowing force, does not exist, well then we're all off the hook, aren't we? There's no divine retribution, no divine consolation. And if the whole experience stinks out, well, what'd you expect, right? That's the question that that question of expectations interests me. If there's no God, or if there is a God that is disinterested in our puny little affairs, then everything can just roll along always, and we can feel quite justified in declaring certain things impossible, other things unfair. If God, or the lack of God, is responsible for the state of the world, then we can easily wax cynical or resign ourselves to apathy. What's the use? Why try changing anything? This is the use. If there is a responsive, creative force that does hear us and act on our behalf, then we may really be able to do some things. In short, the jig is up. God knows that the sky's the limit. Any honest will tell you, anyone honest will tell you that the possibility is far more frightening than impossibility. That freedom is far more terrifying than any prison. If we do, in fact, have to deal with a force beyond ourselves that involves itself in our lives, then we may have to move into action on those previously impossible dreams. Wow. Let that soak in for a minute if you haven't already. I'd love your feedback on that. Have you considered that before? And then she goes into detail about shame. She says shame is fear, but it's deeper than just fear. Fear comes with the first punch, but it's shame that knocks you out. Shame is very controlling. It's a device that prevents you from growing at all. It convinces us to be embarrassed about ourselves. And then there's art. Art brings things to light. You show your art. Exposing wounds in the air and to the light is something that can be very healing. Think about childhood shaming. Shaming was a preferred practice in my house, not an isolated incident. And being shamed as I was needy or for having any kind of exploration at all. I was made to feel foolish for experimenting or having dreams or believing in myself, or even understanding that it's okay to have talents. If that happened a lot, making art can be difficult for you because of all the internal self-shaming that we still do, because that's our blueprint. On page 68, Julia discusses the concept of detachment. And she talks about it as a coping mechanism for us that grew up in dysfunctional homes. It's kind of where you numb out, you detach, and might not even finish your art projects because you become disinterested in them. By not finishing them, it kind of helps us deny the pain and the vulnerability of bringing them to light. We fool ourselves that we're bored or we don't like it or it's ugly or whatever, and we leave it uncompleted. Do you do that? Some of us brought invisible bones home, as she calls them, that were not met by any recognition or approval. We were faced with indifference or rage by our family or friends that there wasn't any approval, and we were shamed that it was wrong to create, some of us. Some of this doesn't apply to all of you. I understand some of you were, able to freely create, but thank you for some of us that do have blocks in this area for humoring us, and listening through this content. But, maybe you can map this to other applications, even if it wasn't necessarily an art, maybe it was a creative outlet, something you said, an idea, a dream. But think about, those things from the past that get buried. But unfortunately, many of us grow up with messages like it doesn't matter type feelings. We get buried under it doesn't matter what we think, we don't feel valued, or that we matter as people. And the shame lives on, and it just waits to adhere itself to our next effort, our next thing, our next think. This is why artists feel shame in admitting their dreams. Just wanted to ask you, do you ever feel like foolish in admitting the things that interest you or that maybe would be a dream? Is it like silly to you? Maybe something else to consider or share during check-ins. So since we are learning that our inner artist is this creative child, can you see how shame gets re-triggered when we make a piece of art? The act of even making art can cause some people to shame. Deciphering, then she talks about criticism and shaming, because there's a difference. Construction or suggestion-based criticism can be very helpful. But when we're talking about criticism that disparages us, that dismisses us, that ridicules us, that name calls, that condemns, that's very, very toxic. To get over our secrets of shame, we pretty much need to confess them to a safe, sympathetic person that we know is for us. For us, that group or individual is there for us to be able to talk it out. Why is it important to confess your garbage to somebody else? Because the antidote for shame is loving yourself and praising yourself and having the courage in yourself to tell another person that you matter enough to talk about this thing, to get it out and to get healed. When you confess, you're healed. Isn't that interesting? Scripture talks about that too. Ask us if you want those scriptures. Make a list of past compliments and reviews. Don't tell yourself that it doesn't matter, because it does matter. Instead, tell yourself you will heal. Not that it doesn't matter. See the difference? All right, criticism. How do you respond to it? And 72 and 73, there is the, like the number, there's 9 of them there. Think about when you receive criticism, whether it's, performance reviews, or if it was papers in school, or your grades, or times you were coached. I don't know if you have a hard time reading critical emails, or if certain people's emails trigger you, or the way they write text from certain people that trigger you. People you have to unfollow because they trigger you. But also bring that back to the criticism. I know some people are just polarizing to you, but if it's a critical thing they've said, try to look at some of these items. Creativity is the only cure for criticism, kind of getting back on that horse. Okay. And then she also talks about the detective work exercise 73, 74. I'd love in your check-ins for you to share about that. Some of those interesting to you, but they were. What'd you find out? And then there's the growth section. And, to sum up what she talks about here, we need to be nice to ourselves. We need to give ourselves what we need, and we need to open ourselves up so we're able to receive the Creator's gifts. And then, think about everything you're carrying around and holding on to. Excuse me. If your hands are full of all this stuff, how can you accept anything new? So you have to be able to process and release. And as for healing, the stuff, the garbage you're holding, to empty out your hands so that you can make room for new. You want to be constantly being filled by the Creator. But what if your hands are too full? That makes sense, that analogy. All right. If we read the last thing together on 75, second paragraph, the expression, God helps those who help themselves, may take on a new and very different meaning. Where in the past it translated, God helps only those who earn help, it will now come to signify that an amazing number of small free gifts that the Creator showers on those who are helping themselves to a little bounty. If you do one nice thing a day for yourself, God will do 2 more. Be alert for support and encouragement from unexpected quarters. Be open to receiving gifts from odd channels, free tickets, free trips, an offer to buy you dinner, a new to you old couch. Practice saying yes to help, to gifts, to people that show up that want to do things, whatever. Be open to it. Life's an adventure, right? Okay. So give yourself some solitude, a commitment to some quiet time. Baby yourself. As a creative, you'll be more productive when you're coaxed than bullied. So don't bully yourself, okay? Keep on keeping on. And some of the tasks, really good. And I know that's so much with everything else that we're supposed to do, but again, just kind of eyeballing these, at least if you're not able to do them now, for in the future, because as you can see, this book in this way of living is a lifestyle with the Creator, right? Not 12 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. So some of the tasks were describe or sketch your childhood room. I've done this one, and I just would be interested to know if anyone else thought about it. But again, you don't have to sketch it, but to describe it. Are you able to like think about the carpeting or the toy box or what your furniture looked like or your bedspread or your curtains? 5 traits as a child or 5 childhood accomplishments. Why are we looking at that? Why are we looking at child stuff? It's obviously relevant, right? Healing comes when you do. We've already seen that in our exchanges in our circle. Powerful. I love watching people get unblocked. All right. Reviewing your habits. That's interesting, huh? List friends who nurture you, people you admire, people that you secretly admire, people you want to meet who are dead. List of people you like and admire. So some of those were interesting. Want to warn you about next week. Next week is called Reading Deprivation. You read the chapter on integrity. Excuse me. But they ask you to not read anything else. And that's really hard in a digital age. This book was written 25 years ago. But it is like asking you to like really limit it. It's almost impossible to do in our age because of the way the communication has happened. But people used to have to read to get all their, information, and it was newspapers or just, other types of books. But when you cut out the magazines and the other type of books and the other types of media and the newspaper article or the news articles online and all that, it's like one of the most powerful exercises if you actually can do it. You could probably do it on like a vacation, but that would be very difficult to do, I know, in our day and age. But read why she talks about it. Think of ways that you can participate in reducing the reading. Obviously, you're supposed to read the chapter. You do your morning pages, but just see what she has to say about that. It's kind of eye-opening. I was able to limit it in the times I've gone through. Or if you just step away from technology for a couple of days, even how that feels, you may have done that. But I just want to give you a heads up that, in that content for next week. So kind of be thinking about your calendar and just pray through also what in your life you can let go of that isn't important short term so you can do more for yourself. And I know with you, some of you work 2 jobs or you have a lot of other people that you care for, but sometimes there is these windows that you can stash away for yourself and look forward to. It's important. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. I can't wait to do check-ins. Take care.